Everyone, welcome to channel Qtomation. In previous session, we have seen different type of authentication supported in REST assured API testing. So far in couple of sessions we have seen about basic authentication, digest authentication, preemptive basic authentication, bearer token, and how to use custom authentication, that is by using API keys. So these we have already seen in our previous couple of sessions. So if you haven't watched those sessions, I will request you to watch those sessions first. And in today's session, we will see about one more type of authentication in REST, that is OAuth 1.0 and OAuth 2.0. So nowadays, OAuth 1.0 is almost deprecated. Most of the modern applications are using OAuth 2.0. But we will still see in OAuth 1.0 by using REST assured how we can execute the test, or we can do authentication by using OAuth 1.0. So we will see just example. So I could not find exact website which supports OAuth 1.0, but I will just show you how we can perform REST assured test case by using OAuth 1.0. So let's create a new class. I'm naming it as OAuth demo. So we have created a class file. After creating the class file, let's create one test in this. But before that, let's import some of the static packages as well, which are used for REST assured. So I'm just importing those packages, and let's paste those packages here. Now inside our test method, inside our class, let's create one method. First we will see example of OAuth 1. So I'm naming it as test OAuth demo. So this is a method which we have created. Let's put @test annotation. So we have created one test by using @test annotation. That's it. So we have created one test. We have named it as test OAuth demo. So in OAuth, so OAuth is one of the type of authentication technique. So in OAuth 1.0, what we have to do is, let me just show you one sample example. So let's add given section, when section, and dot then section. So given, when, and then section. So when we have to use OAuth 1.0, we have to pass few things in OAuth section. So in given section, we have to add dot auth dot OAuth. So for OAuth 1, you have to just use OAuth. And if you see, there are few parameters which you have to pass. So few things we have to pass in OAuth 1.0 authentication. And all those things we will receive by project who is going to develop the project. They will provide you four things: consumer key. So in OAuth 1.0, we need consumer key. Along with consumer key, we will need consumer secret. Along with consumer secret, we will also require access token. and access token secret. So these four things we will require for OAuth 1.0. So whenever we are doing OAuth 1.0 authentication, we need these four things. And that four things we have to pass like this in given section dot auth dot OAuth, and all the four values we have to pass. So it will automatically validate by using OAuth 1.0. And normally in main section, we can simply provide the URL. So I don't have the actual URL, but we can just imagine it. So let's say this is a some URL, for example, https www.xyzabc.com. This is a get type of request, and just imagine this is a actual URL. So we have to pass that URL in get section, and in then section as usual we can validate with status code, let's say 200, etc. So this is a simple example by which we can use OAuth 1.0 authentication. So just understand we have to pass these four things in .auth .oauth, consumer key, consumer secret, access token, and access token secret. And all these four things will be provided by project manager or whoever has developed that project. They will provide these four values, and those values would be required to access those APIs which supports OAuth 1.0. So this is a simple example of OAuth 1.0. But nowadays, OAuth 1.0 is not used. It's almost deprecated now. Most of the modern applications nowadays uses OAuth 2.0. So we will see actual example of OAuth 2.0 now. So before that, let's on a high level understand what is OAuth 2.0. So this is a architecture diagram of OAuth 2.0 authentication flow. So this diagram illustrates the standard flow of OAuth 2.0 with the following key components. So whenever we use OAuth 2.0, normally there are four key components: client, resource owner, authorization server, and resource server. One simple example which we have normally seen is whenever nowadays we are logging to some application, they normally ask you to log in with Facebook, Google, GitHub, or any other third party websites. So that basically follows the OAuth 2.0. For example, I will just show you one example. So let's go to GoRest website. So when you go to this GoRest website and you click on login, so when you go to this website and click on login, it asks you for authentication required and login with your social account. So we are on GoRest website. We are trying to log into GoRest website, but we can log into this website by using any of these three options. They have provided these three options by using GitHub credentials, or by using your Google credentials, or by using your Microsoft credentials. So this basically follows OAuth 2.0. So when you click on this Microsoft, let's say I click on this Microsoft, and if you see the URL, it will ask you for Microsoft credentials. And if you see here, it is showing you OAuth 2 version 2.0. So basically we will provide credentials of Microsoft, and it will authorize by using those credentials. It will create one access token. So authorization server will create one access token, and by using that access token, it will access the resources. So that is high level idea of OAuth 2.0. So that is high level idea of OAuth 2.0. So it's fine if you don't understand too much in details, but just understand how the flow works. So let's understand step by step. So there are mainly four things: client, resource owner, authorization server, and resource server. So first step is authorization request. Client requests authorization from the resource owner to access protected resources. And this is usually done by redirecting the user to consent screen. So resource owners means user. So we can consider ourselves as a resource owner. And client is basically you can consider as GoRest website. So when we try to access any APIs on Go REST, it asked us to authorize by using Microsoft credentials. So it will ask you for authorization request, and once you provide the correct credentials or you can access the grant, so that will be granting the access. So authorization will be granted in first step. After user consent, the resource owner will provide authorization grant, typically a code to the client. And after that authorization is granted, client will forward that authorization grant to the authorization server requesting an access token. So in this step, after authorization is granted by resource owner, that means by user, next step is the client, or we can say a Go REST website, will authorization grant to authorization server. It will request for access token to authorization server. An authorization server, on the basis of authorization provided by client, it will give one access token to client. And by using that access token, we can access resources on the server. So whatever protected resources are there, that will be accessed by using that access token. So access token is very important here. By using access token only, it will be able to access the protected resources on resource server. So upon validating the grant, the authorization server will issue an access token to the client, and then client will use that access token to access protected resources on the resource server. If the token is valid, the resource server will return the requested protected resources to client in response. So that is high level flow of OAuth 2.0. So what we have to understand is access token. So whenever the resource owner grants the request, authorization server, it will be redirected, and authorization server will grant one access token to client. And now client will use that access token to access the protected resource. So whenever we are trying to access any APIs on application which supports OAuth 2.0, we need that access token. And normally the creation of access token is provided by that specific application. So that application will provide you the steps by which we can generate that access token. And once you generate the access token, we can use that token to call the APIs, and we can get the response which are protected. So one of the website which we can use for practical purpose is PayPal website. So this is a developer.paypal.com. On this website, I have just logged in with my account. I have logged in by using my account credentials. So if you haven't created the account, first create your account on paypal.com, then go to developer.paypal.com, and you can log into your account. So what I want to do is I want to access some of the APIs. So in developer.paypal.com, if you see, there are some APIs. So in APIs and SDKs, you can see REST APIs. And in REST APIs, we can see different type of API calls which are present. And let's say I want to call those API, but before calling those API, if you see, PayPal uses OAuth 2.0. So we cannot directly call those API. So first we have to generate one access token. So first we have to generate one access token, then only we will be able to access REST APIs of paypal.com. Then only we will be able to access those APIs. So if you go to their dashboard, just go to developer.paypal.com, dashboard, applications and sandbox mode. Here you can go to apps and credentials. So now we are going to generate one access token. And to generate that access token, we need app ID and secret. So if you see their steps, just go to authentication. In developer.paypal.com, API REST authentication. So it says PayPal REST APIs uses OAuth 2.0 access tokens to authenticate the request. And for that we have to use the access token that will authorize us to use the PayPal REST API server. And if you want to see those APIs, so here you can see those APIs as well. So let's say I want to check for one of the API. So let's say invoicing API. Now these are some of the invoice details API. If you see, this is invoice API which will bring the invoice details, or let's say all invoice details, at least invoice. Now this is one of the API which brings all the invoices which are present. If you see the API documentation, these are their different type of APIs. So I'm just going to call one of the API. Our main intention is to check OAuth 2.0. So let's see one of the API to bring all invoices. So let me just quickly check those out. So this is a get API. This is a curl. So if you see, this is basically API. I have already copied that API. So this is endpoint of that API. API slash m.sandbox.paypal.com slash v1 invoicing slash invoices. After that, there are some query parameters. Page equals to 3 and page size equal to 4 and total count required equals to true. But what I will do initially, once you get that API, let me just quickly show you. So our first step is we should have authentication access token. So for to get that access token, we have to manually follow some steps. So that application PayPal has already provided those steps. So first they have given this API which will generate the access token, and they have also provided the detailed steps. So you have to just copy this endpoint as the request URL. So I'm just copying that URL here to generate the access token. So this is basically API to generate the access token. So this is a endpoint. It is a post type of request. Inside the authorization tab, we have to select basic authentication. So here authorization tab, we have to select basic authentication. And inside this basic authentication, we have to pass username and password. Username and password are basically client ID and secret. So from where we can get this client ID and secret? So once you go to apps and credentials, inside developer.paypal.com, apps and credentials, first you have to log into your account. So once you go to your account, apps and credentials, we can see client ID and client secret. So if you click on this, it will show you the client secret. Let me just log in. So let me just quickly log in with my code. That's it. So once you log in, you can see the client ID and client secret. If you click on this show, it will show you entire client secret. So we have to pass this client ID and client secret inside this API parameters. In basic auth, we have to paste the client ID. We have to paste the client secret. So I'm just copying this client ID and let's paste it here. I'm also copying this client secret and let's paste it here. Once you paste client ID and client secret, this is the endpoint. You can simply click on send. Once you click on send, it will give you success response. In the response, you will get your access token. Now this is the access token which we have received. That access token we can use now to access any API of PayPal in sandbox mode. So this access token I have to use now. So by using this access token, I can access the APIs of paypal.com. I can use this for different type of APIs. So let's say I want to check for one of the API of invoices. So let's say in sandbox mode, I want invoices API. I have already used that. So let me just show you that sample API here. So this is basically a sample API which is provided, which will bring the invoices. So now this is API endpoint. But if you don't pass the access token, for example, here if you see, or let's say I'm just passing no invoice token here. Let's say pass incorrect one and see what happens. In authorization, let's say I'm not passing any authentication, and if I try to access this API, it will show you authentication failure. If you see here, it will show you authentication failure because it needs that access token. So we have to provide that access token which we have generated by using this get access token API, in which we have to pass client ID and client secret with the type of basic authentication, in which you have passed that client ID and client secret, and we will receive this access token. So now we can pass this access token. So I am just copying this access token. Let's copy it. And that access token we can use in this specific invoice API. So that access token, we can select, let's say, OAuth 2.0. And here we can paste that access token. So I'm just pasting that access token here. And now if I click on send, it will give you correct response. It will give you 200 OK response, and this is a correct response which we are able to receive. So currently there are no invoice, that's why it is showing you total count as 0, but our API call is successful by using OAuth token. So we have used access token. So first understand, we have to generate the access token, and once you generate that access token manually, we can use that access token in APIs. So now let's see by using rest assured how we can perform this action. So by using rest assured, how we can do the same action. So let's go to our Eclipse code. Let's save this file. I will create one more test method. I am just going to comment our previous one for OAuth 1.1. Now I am going to show you for OAuth 2.0. So at the rate test, and here I am just naming it as test OAuth 2 demo. In given section for OAuth 1, we have to pass these four things: consumer key, consumer secret, access token, and access token secret. But in OAuth 2.0, we don't have to pass all those things. We don't have to pass all those things. What we have to do is given dot auth dot OAuth 2. So if you see, there is OAuth 2, and in this OAuth 2, we just have to pass that access token. So which access token we have to pass is the one which we have generated here. So we have to copy this access token, and that access token we have to pass here. So I'm just pasting that access token here, and along with the access token, if you see in this URL of invoice API, if you see this URL, this is endpoint. Up to this is a endpoint, but after question marks there are some query parameters. So page equals to 3, page size equal to 4, and total count required is equal to true. So these are basically query parameters. So we have to pass those query parameters here. In given section, we have to pass dot query param. Inside this query param, first one is page. So page value is 3, and two more query parameters we have to pass. So control V, control V. Another parameter is, what is the next query parameter? Page size equal to 4. Page underscore size equal to 4. Here we have to pass 4, and third parameter is total count required. Total count required, and value we have to pass as true. And in when section we have to pass this URL. So up to invoices we have to use this control C, and that we have to pass here. And what is the request type? It is a get request type. And then we can validate the status code should be 200, and also we can log the entire response as well. Dot log dot all. So it will print the entire response in the console. So this is a simple example of using OAuth 2.0 in REST assured. So for OAuth 2.0, what we require is access token. And how to generate that access token? Those steps will be provided. So in PayPal, what we have done? We have used this get access token API, in which we have to pass client ID and client secret. That client ID and client secret we have received on this apps and credentials section. Once you create your account, you can get this client ID and client secret. So it will generate that access token. And by using that access token, we can pass that access token in OAuth 2.0. So whatever API we want to use, we just have to pass that access token in auth type OAuth 2.0, and here we can paste that token. And once you hit that request, you will get the correct successful response here. So that's how it works. So let's execute this test file now. So let's execute this test case, run as testng test. So once you execute this test case is passed. That means our authentication is successful. So if you see, the entire response is also printed in the console. So this is how we can use OAuth 2.0. So just understand the difference between OAuth 1.0 and OAuth 2.0. So when we used OAuth 1.0, it needs consumer key, consumer secret, access token secret, etc. But nowadays, most of the application don't use OAuth 1.0. They uses OAuth 2.0. So for that we need to generate one access token. How to generate that access token? All those steps will be provided. Whenever that project you will get, you will know all the steps to generate that access token. And by using that access token, we can pass it in OAuth 2, and query parameters if there are any. You can access all those APIs which follows the OAuth 2.0 authentication. So I hope you have understood different type of authentications which we have used in our REST assured. So what we have seen basic authentication, we have seen digest authentication, preemptive basic authentication. We have also seen how to use bearer token. We have also seen how to use custom authentication by using API keys. And we have also seen today OAuth 1.0 and OAuth 2.0. So that is how we can use different type of authentication depending on your project. So whenever you receive any API testing project, project manager will inform you what type of authentication it supports. Some APIs might support basic authentication, some project will support bearer token, some APIs might require OAuth 2.0, or some APIs might also require custom authentication. So that will depend on which type of authentication it is supporting. But what is most important part is how to use rest assured syntax for different type of authentications. So we have seen different examples. So in first example we have seen, in today's session we have seen OAuth 1.0. This is basically a basic auth demo which we have seen in our previous sessions. So this is for using basic authentication. Then we have seen how to use digest authentication. Then we have seen preemptive authentication demo. After that, we have also seen by using API key. So sometimes we have to use API key and we have to pass that in our header section. We have also seen bearer token. So whenever token type is bearer token, we have to again pass that inside the header section. along with bearer keyword and that token value. So that is bearer token type. And in today's session, we have seen OAuth 1.0 and OAuth 2.0. So these are the most commonly used authentication techniques in APIs as well as rest assured. So let's meet in our next session to understand some different topic about rest assured. So thanks again.